This is the Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, on Alternative Talk, AM 1150. Now, back to the show with local mortgage and finance expert, Tina Mitchell.
Well, welcome back to the Money Hour with your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, right here on 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, August 16th show. I bring into studio each week the best of the best experts in our local market on everything regarding money. I'm here to help you in today's economy, and today is all about real estate. If you're hearing my show at a different time or day, you're listening to a rebroadcast, but you can always call into the show at 1-855-400-1150. Again, that's 1-855-400-1150 or online at themoneyhour.com. Definitely you'll want to keep that number because I guarantee if you're a buyer or a seller or you're thinking of being a buyer or seller in the future, you will definitely want to pick up the phone and call one of my guests. Experts in the real estate field here to share wealth of information on our local real estate market. Jeff Prescott with Remax Metro, Kari Scott with John L. Scott, West Seattle, and John Grieco with Windermere Real Estate Wall Street. You guys, thank you so much for coming in and sharing all your wealth of information. I'm excited about the panel because it's something a little bit different than I do occasionally. So thank you.
You're most welcome.
Great to be here.
And it's great to hear all three of you at one time. So let's go ahead and start out with what's happening in our local real estate market right now.
It is hot.
It definitely is, John. A little bit more of what you're seeing happening out there.
Yeah, definitely. It is basically flip-flopped completely. It's now a seller's market.
So what does that mean? If we have a buyer or if we have a listener out there right now, either on the buyer or seller side, what does that mean in a seller's market?
It's a great time to sell. It just means more competition for buyers. We have a very large demand, very little supply.
Okay.
Yes.
So when we talk about that, John, let's just say, and anybody that wants to answer this, it is a seller's market, so it's a great time to sell a property. So as the buyer out there, and there are buyers out there that are looking to get into the market, is it a bad time for buyers to purchase, being that it's a seller's market?
No, it's a more challenging time for a buyer right now.
Okay, so what challenges?
Well, the inventory is low and the demand is high. Interest rates are awesome, so it's a great time to buy theoretically. But when you're up against a lot of cash buyers and multiple bids, buyers have to really step up and bring their A game to their offer with escalator clauses and just try to romance the seller enough that they'll want to sell to them. Whether it's a letter, a picture, a story, great earnest money, a lot percentage of down payment, great pre-approval. It's just very, very competitive.
And so if you heard what Kari's answer was, their first thing is it's the interest rates are historically low. And I've talked in studio before about the cost or the price and what's more important. The cost is always more important than price. We're still getting a great price right now, but this cost is unrealistic. So when you look at the numbers, would you wait? If you thought the real estate market was going to drop, would you wait knowing that interest rates are going to go up? You would never do that because it's always going to have a better bottom line in getting at a low cost. And I think that we're actually a low price right now because I think we've got an amazing market coming for the next few years. Any of you have a crystal ball of what you think is going to happen in the next 5 years in our real estate market?
Oh, if only.
I hope it's more of the same.
Yeah, more of the same. Jeff, what do you think?
My fuzzy crystal ball, when I talk to my clients is that I do expect appreciation to continue, but not at the rate that we are right now. I do see that it will start leveling off to a degree, which is a good thing, I believe. We don't want what we had.
We don't want the crazy
recession to begin with. And while a big part of that appreciation may have passed us, there's still more to go. The country is still recovering from this recession, and real estate will benefit from that.
So when you're looking at trends, because there are trends that are indicators that can be used to say what our real estate market is going to do. Now, for me, when clients ask me, what do you think the real estate market's going to do? Of course, what I do is I refer them back to my realtor partner, like one of you. But I do say a lot of people have an opinion on employment, and history of real estate, it always follows employment. So if you've got an opinion on employment, you think employment's going to be getting better, the real estate market's going to improve, vice versa. So what other indicators and trends can people be looking at as an indicator for what the real estate market's going to do?
Well, speaking of unemployment, Tina, I do have the latest numbers here.
Okay.
So we've got King County's unemployment rate fell to 4.3%. and that was in June.
Okay.
From 5.2% in March, and from 4.7% a year ago. So
okay. So it makes sense. If the employment market is recovering, that people are going to be investing and have a better opportunity that they're going to make money to invest in real estate.
Exactly.
Jeff, what are your thoughts? What other indicators?
One of the key things that my team tracks is year-over-year rolling appreciation rates.
Okay.
And when we look back even 10 and 15 years, I declared November 06. That's when the recession started. On my numbers of the neighborhoods that I follow, that's where the appreciation started going negative.
Okay.
And then the cliff happened soon after.
Yep.
So that's what I follow personally on a monthly basis is the rolling appreciation rates.
Makes sense. And Kari, you'd mentioned cash buyers. What does that mean when we've got cash buyers? Because we have a lot of cash buyers coming in, and cash buyers coming in from other countries that are coming in to purchase and take advantage. Why is that?
Well, there's a lot of hedge funds that have come to Seattle. Warren Buffett has one here that bought 1,600 homes last year, and he bought them all cash. So that made such competition for first-time home buyers that would get pre-approved by a good lender like you. You would have your letter, you'd be ready to go, and then the cash would just trump them out, and then we're closing in 2 weeks with no inspections. So for first-time home buyers, or even just in the middle, like anything under 600 was really a tough market to get into.
Makes total sense. And I think if Warren's buying, we should be buying, right?
Well, he's been pretty clairvoyant in his career that I might just follow his track. But one thing that he's done is he has these American hedge funds, but they've been funded by foreign money.
Yes.
So we have a huge influx of different demographics coming to Seattle.
Yeah.
And even our company at John L. Scott, we have translators that you can get for any type of language that you might need coming in, and we have a huge Asian market that's really populated Seattle a lot. So we've got special programs that can really accommodate the translation part to make it easy for us to help them.
That's great. Now, you'd mentioned about lending, and that's my arena. For those of you listening to the show that did not know, I'm a mortgage expert. That's what I do full time. I just hang out with you on Saturdays here in studio. But there are some things that should be happening on the lender side, and I would love to hear from you on the realtor side. What does a lender need to do to help you in a multiple offer scenario to make your buyer more appealing?
That's a great added piece. The lenders that I'm working with, one locally, of course, everything should be local lenders such as yourself. We're having the lenders actually place a personal phone call into the listing agent.
Exactly.
To really, give our buyers a leg up.
Yep.
And then also another thing that's very important, not only with only using a local lender, but local underwriting. So a lot of my buyer clients have a full approval, not just a pre-approval.
Yes. So you've covered two big ones. I do a lot of work with agents, obviously here, and Jeff just recently, with one of our listings. Every time Jeff is emailing immediately when he's going to submit that offer, the listing agent's name and number. I'm making that call. It's huge, and I don't know why every single loan officer is not picking up the phone, and I also don't know why, John, why every realtor, unlike you guys, don't actually take advantage of that, because it's in my call when that approval letter goes out. It's right in the email, and I can't tell you how many times I don't get the opportunity because the information isn't provided before the offer. You'd also mentioned about a firm, an approval, so not just a DU underwriting automated system, but actually hits the underwriter and you have an approval. Kari, what about you? What else is important for you on the lending side that's going to help you with a buyer in a multiple offer situation?
Well, I think when I'm up against 5 offers and I have a really strong buyer, a lot of times the lender will actually call the agent prior to me even submitting the offer, which I like to do in person.
Yes,
because I want that eye-to-eye contact to really sell my client. And just they'll say, oh, your lender called. And you're like, oh, great. And they told me all about your buyer. So it was almost like a pre-introduction to my offer before I even submitted it.
Exactly. Jeff, what about you?
Having that lender call for me is also a third-party verification. It's not me saying how great my buyer is, because my buyer is great.
Yes.
But it's a third party who's also confirming that they're great. And more importantly, that their wallet is great.
Yes. Makes
That's
makes
what
total
the seller wants to know, is the wallet.
Makes total sense. And in the lending industry, you got to have a guarantee on your closing. It should be right there on your pre-approval letter. They guarantee, for me, it's $1,000 if not closed within a 30-day calendar day. And as the agents that I work with know, that we close much quicker than that on a regular basis, but the guarantee is on 30 days. So make sure you get something in writing. And I say have it in the pre-approval letter, because that way the listing agent that's representing the seller and all these pre-approval letters, they're saying you've got one that stands out with that guarantee. So let's go ahead and move this on to a loan program, because that's a little bit of a challenge in my arena in doing mortgages when you're in a multiple offer scenario. And we've got VA buyers, USDA buyers, FHA buyers, conventional buyers that makes more sense to do a low down payment and buy out mortgage insurance versus doing a 20% down. What are you guys experiencing there? Any suggestions?
My buyers I've been working with successfully are coming in with 20% down or more. And there was a multiple offer situation recently where they came in with, they had 25% down, and they're with an escalation, which Kari had mentioned earlier. And we got the deal, even though we were $2,200 less than the competition, than the other offers were down there. So that tells me that down payment had a big deal.
Yes. I just had a client that came in with a substantial down payment. I think it was 40% down. And then immediately after a closing, did a home equity line of credit, got it back, and he's going to turn around and refinance after he's got a 6-month seasoning, because you need to have a 6-month seasoning to refinance and get cash out. Now, he knew up front exactly what his options were. That's what he wanted to do. And, so we did a no closing cost loan the first time around, and we're going to do a closing cost loan the second time around. The unfortunate thing with that is who knows where the interest rates are going to be in 6 months, but he was tired of losing out on these properties, and it's what he needed to do to get that offer accepted. Let's talk just a couple minutes before we go to break here. Actually, I've got 1 minute, so I'll let one of you guys answer this. New construction, what do you see happening in the new construction arena?
There's a lot of it.
What does that mean, Kari?
What that means is that there was a lot of projects that were on hold because money was hard to get, as you know. And now they've got their funding. And so we're seeing a whole lot of completed new construction instead of just half done new construction.
Exactly. On Capitol Hill, there are 1,700 units being constructed right now.
Oh, my golly. Just on Capitol Hill?
Just on Capitol Hill.
It's in every neighborhood, though. I mean, you just get in your car and drive, and there's new things popping up left and right and left and right. And permits that were on hold are suddenly they're building them fast.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot to choose from, which in some points makes it hard for the developer.
Well, and it does. And thank goodness if there's a lot to choose from, because we need the inventory. And, the whole thing with the risk of shadow inventory, boy, that never happened. So
interestingly enough, in addition to what Kari and Jeff are saying with the new construction, we're seeing a lot of pre-sales. They're not even finished.
Is true.
And this is why it's so important more than ever to work with a realtor, a highly professional realtor.
It makes total sense, John. Well, coming up next in the Money Hour, Everything Real Estate, we're going to continue the conversation, and only with the best of the industry. My panel conversation with Jeff Prescott with RE/MAX Metro, Kari Scott with John L. Scott, West Seattle, and John Grieco with Windermere Real Estate, Wall Street, right here on 1150 KKNW after the short break.
This is the Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, on Alternative Talk, AM 1150. Now, back to the show with local mortgage and finance expert, Tina Mitchell.
Welcome back to the Money Hour with your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, right here on 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, August 16th show. Each week I share expert advice and inside knowledge on how today's events and our local economy can affect anything regarding your money. And if you're hearing my show at a different time or day, you're listening to a rebroadcast, to talk with myself or any of the guests that I have in studio today, pick up the phone, give the show a call, 1-855 855-400-1150. Again, that's 1-855-400-1150, or online at themoneyhour.com. And in studio right now, we're going to have a continued conversation on my panel, Everything Real Estate. I have Jeff Prescott with Remax Metro, Kari Scott with John L. Scott, West Seattle, and John Grieco with Windermere Real Estate Wall Street. Thanks, you guys, for hanging out for the entire show and talking everything real estate. And we kind of left in commercial. We were talking a little bit about new construction. We've been talking about what the craziness in the market, maybe some predictions of what's coming up. And I'd like to just tag in here a story, because I know my listeners love to hear stories from my guest. And any success story that you have regarding a buyer, or a success story regarding a seller and maximizing profit. Any of you have a story to share?
Well, I have one I've keep as one of my favorite ones. This is from a few months ago of a couple that were moving from central Seattle to the east side. Mm-hmm. And I had sold them their house. They bought their house through me about 7 years ago with the intent to do a fair amount of work, which never occurred until it was ready to list. And they were so attentive and listened to the various things, primarily in kitchen. We kept the boxes and just simply put a new butcher block counter on top. Mm-hmm. It just looked awesome. It was so effective and cost effective as well, and a few appliances. The day before we went on market, 2 doors down, don't mean to be disrespectful, but a cheap flip went on market.
Okay.
And they did have a more all new cabinetry, but it was cheap stuff. Uh-huh. And we sold in 8 days, and that remained on market for nearly 3 months.
Wow.
And it was just going through, doing smart, cost-effective updates.
Yep.
And we didn't tear anything down to studs. We just went in, and they were delightful to work with, got their nails dirty.
Yeah.
And I did the tiling. That was my contribution. I tiled the backsplash in the kitchen, so I got my nails dirty too. I love that sort of thing.
Well, you're always in there helping your clients with all that the work that needs to be done. And there are so many things, and it's so important, not just in this real estate market, in any real estate market, that you have to have the best of the best working for you. Why would we ever hire not the best of the best? And the old 80-20 rule, it's a rule for everything. And I'm telling you that 20% of the realtors do 80% of the business. Mm-hmm. And I think 1% of the industry does a majority of the business. And so it's finding those key people to work with. Let's talk about a buyer. I mean, with the wrong representation, what does that mean for a buyer in this market?
Well, they won't be successful.
They just won't get a house. So do you hear that as a buyer if you're not working with the right agent? And let me tell you what I experience as well is whether the realtor is working for the buyer or the realtor is working for the seller, they work for both buyers and sellers. So they're on either side of it. And they know each other in the industry. And so when it comes into this multiple offer scenario, they want to take those offers with the established real estate agents. And the reason why is because there's a lot of stuff that can go wrong during the process. And so when they know that they're working with an agent that has a good reputation in the market. Is that correct?
Yes. I mean, I've gotten many deals just because the agent knows me on the other side. They know how I work. They know that I'm going to get the deal done. They know if we come up with a problem that I have the skill set to work through it so that everyone comes to a win-win at the end.
Yes.
Exactly.
I think we all
can. Bumps in the road is kind of,
I think we all can. But I think we all can say we have worked with an agent that on the other side has just not been a pleasant experience. We end up we do the work on both sides because we want to make it great for our client no matter what side we're on. So simply just having a good reputation in this market it's something your buyers can't quantify, but at the end result they're happy because they got the house they wanted.
Totally agree. And so let's talk about a mistake of an agent that doesn't have not even the reputation, which is bad in itself, but they just don't know what they're doing, because there's a lot of them out there that don't. So what is a mistake that they can make either on a buyer or seller side that can be devastating?
No communication.
Okay, so give an example of no communication.
I have one that's closing today.
Okay.
It was on the east side, and on the sign it said it was a certain company, but when I looked in the listing, it was actually another agent from another company with a different phone number. And this agent went MIA and had some issues in their personal life that kind of came up. So I called after trying to do both sides for like the last month. I called about a week ago and I said, you're really going through some stuff. Do you think that maybe I could call the other person that's on there? Because you don't want to make them mad. He's friend or foe. You want to keep them on your friendly side.
Sure.
So then the other person came on, didn't have any idea what was going on. I just saw the seller 2 days ago when we were doing our final walkthrough. Seller's completely unhappy with their agents.
Wow.
Said that the communication was just absolutely horrible. And all I did is smile because I don't want to disparage anyone else, another agent, of course. But it was just like a complete nightmare. Trying to talk to two people, neither one knew what was going on. To give you just a quick example, I asked for the Form 17 for 3.5 weeks.
Wow.
Oh, my goodness.
3.5. It came 4 days ago.
Wow.
So, I mean, if you don't have an agent that's on it, I mean, buyers don't even know the damage that can happen to them if their agent just goes AWOL.
Exactly.
Well, let's talk about earnest money. I mean, what? Give me an example of earnest money, and by not having good representation, that earnest money is risk. And look at the earnest money that people are writing. Minimum 1%, usually 3% in this market, right?
I've taken 4 earnest monies in my career.
Yeah. Wow. So
2 of them were on the same house.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I think
John, what do you see in a risk?
In regards to earnest money, that's an interesting piece, because another thing that we're seeing is we're seeing agents that don't even know the contracts. So how do you represent your client, your client's best interest?
So give me an example of that, John, of an agent that doesn't even understand the contract that they're putting together.
I had one transaction recently where I was representing the seller, and the buyer's agent switched lenders, had their buyer switch lenders without written seller consent.
Wow.
And
I know that, and I'm not a realtor.
Yeah. And, the earnest money was lost. So luckily we came to an agreement. And we split it.
Too, I heard and then Jeff, I want to go to you afterwards, but I got to make a comment because I heard a realtor say this, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm in the lending industry, but I know a lot that's going on, and maybe it's because I have you guys all here in studio, so I keep hearing these things, but who wouldn't know that this outrageous amount of earnest money, which I do know that there's a maximum 5%. I did learn that. Maximum 5% earnest money, which was I didn't know that, but has a 5% earnest money maximum, and their lender is saying that they can't close on time, and the agent didn't know that not closing on time meant that 5% earnest money was at risk. I mean, right? Who would not? Yeah. That's a pretty big deal. I don't know. It's crazy. Jeff?
I recently had an experience with a listing of mine, and we took the earnest money, and when it deposited, it bounced. So that's a big deal.
Yeah.
You call immediately, your check bounced. Oh, and they flew right over to replace it, and then the second one bounced.
What?
But then she hid that from me for 4 days. And the story gets long, and I'm not sure how the detail.
To make it, yeah.
They said they would deposit it in their office account. Then that one bounced, number one. Then number two, they went to escrow, and then that's where they deposited the second one. And 4 days later, escrow is calling me to ask why the check is bounced.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I'm the listing side. I call her. So it's very confusing. So there is a lot.
Taught
me to really follow up.
Yes, and you have to. And I got to keep putting on the lending side again, because I can't tell you, I never get requests, hardly ever, about removing finance contingency. And my team they're looking at that finance contingency, because it doesn't matter if you're closing on time. Once that finance contingency passes, then the earnest money is at risk. Well, why am I not getting a call on every single transaction to make sure that they can release? I don't know. It's crazy. But
it's because they don't know what they don't know.
They don't. And it's so surprising, because there is very few realtors that are deserving to give the representation to consumers out there. And I can't say enough how important that is. So let's go on to talk a couple minutes here before I take it back to break again on distressed properties. What's happening in the distressed property arena that you can share with my listeners?
Regarding short sales, you mean?
And any distressed property, John, that you think is important to share?
The only thing, I don't specialize in short sales, but the only thing I'm seeing is they're anything but short.
Yeah, I know. They call them short sales. So it's not getting any better. They're still long sales.
And I'm not seeing them. I mean, I don't see any urgency with the banks releasing them since we're in a depreciating market.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah. Any other, because I mean, it was a whole conversation around distressed properties and how they're going to hit the market, but they definitely are not, and things are not getting any better. What about purchasing these distressed properties versus, what are you telling your buyers if a buyer comes in and says, you know what, I want to look at these distressed properties. I want to get a really good deal. How are you educating?
They're not the good deals.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not necessarily good deals. Short sales used to be a significant portion of my business, and nowadays it's not nearly as much as it used to be. And I always tell buyers, especially, it's a two-step process. The first offer that comes in finally gets the banks to tell us what it is they're going to accept.
Yep.
And they don't look at the purchase price on the agreement. They're going to come back with a number. And I prepare my clients that number can be anything.
Yes.
And that's often why our short sales come back on market. We finally got the number and buyer one said no to.
Right.
And so we come in prepared with the number of what to expect.
Okay.
And that they're ready, that you may go in 50 grand under. The bank may come up with this higher price. Are you ready to go there? So most of my short sales, when I do them these days, they do close because they're ready for this two-step process.
Got it.
And once you get that price point from the bank, very often you can be 45, 50 days from closing, more along the line of a typical sale.
Yeah. And I think it's also important, again, getting back to experience, because I have a lot of realtors that are just on the other end of the transaction, and the clients weren't referred by me, but they came with their real estate agent already in play. And I've had a few times where the short sale at the end, the agents are not checking up, and this house is going into foreclosure. I mean, there's been some real nightmare stories around that. So you've got to make sure that your agent is doing due diligence and everything to make sure that process that the communication is there and they understand what's happening. And coming up next on the Money Hour, we're going to continue our discussion about the real estate market and some things that are happening in our local real estate market. I have Jeff Prescott with Remax Metro, Kari Scott with John L. Scott West, Seattle, and John Grieco with Windermere Real Estate Wall Street, all here on my real estate panel right here on 1150 AM KKNW after the short break.
This is the Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, on Alternative Talk, AM 1150. Now, back to the show with local mortgage and finance expert, Tina Mitchell.
Welcome back to the Money Hour with your host and mortgage expert Tina Mitchell right here on 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, August 16th show. I am dedicated to my listeners, providing you with the tools needed to make informed decisions on all matters regarding your money. And really excited. I do this occasionally, but not often. So it's always a special treat to have my Realtor panel and have just a conversation around real estate in our local market. Jeff Prescott with Remax Metro, Kari Scott with John L. Scott West Seattle, and John Grieco with Windermere Real Estate Wall Street. Thanks, you guys, for again hanging out for the entire show and having a great conversation with me around the real estate market.
You bet.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
It's great.
Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about a buyer that's thinking that they want to purchase a home. What is the first step that they need to be doing?
Get pre-approved.
Get pre-approved.
Did you guys hear that?
It's strong enough.
Pick up the phone, talk to your mortgage representative, and
pick
it's
up the phone and
pick
talk.
up
not
the phone.
On,
Yeah, and I think
Call
if you're-
Tina.
Call
there you go.
Tina.
Give me a
Call
call.
Tina.
I'm here to help you guys.
Exactly.
And if you are working with an established a realtor and you have that relationship and you trust them, find out who their lending partner is. Let's talk about that, you guys, because there's a team, and you as the real estate professional, for the most part, you're really managing that whole team because they're coming to you first a lot of times. They should be getting approved, but a lot of times the first thing they're doing is they're calling their real estate expert that they've been referred to by a family member. And so you're putting together a team. How important is it, and who are those important people on the team outside of the lending?
I use my title person a great deal, and using someone that I can call last minute for that snag that comes up. So my title person's an important part of my team.
Okay. Kari, who's important on your team?
Well, the closer for me.
Your escrow company?
Yeah, the escrow company is super important because, they're watching out. They're seeing where all the credits and debits are on each side. They're managing all of the conditions of the lender's contract.
Yes.
And making sure that the monies do arrive on time. And if there's a problem, and they say, I'm not getting communication on this side, or I'm still missing this document, and I've asked 3 times, then that cues my assistant because she just hops on it, and then we're managing that part of it. So.
Yeah, and we were talking during the commercial break about the last 4 or 5 days of the transaction is really what people remember. And I always say escrow has the hardest job out of any of us because they are there at the very end and they have no option except for to pick up the pieces that people left. And everything is behind schedule in the escrow because even if everything's on schedule, we're closing loans really quickly in this environment. The reality of it is we're closing things really quickly. That doesn't make it easy to close quickly, but you've got to do it in this environment. John, what about you? Who else is important on that team?
Well, Tina, we're in the relationship business. Real estate is a relationship business. And I think they're all important. We've got title, escrow, and the lender, and they're all part of the team. And everybody plays a pivotal role, just as important.
Yeah, it makes total sense. So it's making sure that you've got the that good representation in all arenas. And I think there's some key questions that can be asked up front. Kari, what about you?
Well, when your team is in place and you feel solid about that, that's just a part of you that doesn't have to micromanage because they've got you and you're helping them. And then you can really put your time and energy and talents into managing your clients' expectations.
Yes.
Because half of that is just educating them through the process. And when we hit the landmines, navigating forward through them so that they're not worrying. So I think there's a bit of Dr. Phil in all of us that are realtors, so we have to help manage people's expectations. So I just think that leaves me more time when I don't have to micromanage someone else's team and I can just really give the client what they need.
Thank you so much. I always talk about my 8 tips to successful closing, and I talk about my 8 milestones. And everybody that's when you're going through these timelines, the worst mistake that you can do. And I'd ask the question, what are the timelines? And I'd be surprised that most people don't even have that at the tip of their tongue because what they're doing is they're managing a closing date. It doesn't matter when the closing date is. What matters is that you have 8 milestones that you have to make to get to that closing date, and you have to have target dates set up for that. And that's how you efficiently manage a closing to ensure everything runs on time almost all the time. Jeff, were you going to say something?
Well, I was going to add another part of my team is my inspectors.
Yes.
I want my buyers to be, when I talk to my buyers about inspections, I call it, this is an education process about the house. Mm-hmm. Something will be there.
Yes.
Now we'll evaluate what that means to you, what it might entail for a next step.
Mm-hmm.
And an inspector who can educate without alarming is important to me.
Yeah, it makes total sense. So let's get back to strategies here for a second, and I'd like to have a different strategy from each one of you. John, I'll start down at the end, closest to window there for our buyer. So if we've got a buyer that's listening to the show right now, it is so important to understand what the strategies are to set themselves aside in the market. What's one strategy you can share, John?
Well, I definitely team up with, with a professional realtor for sure. Mm-hmm. And, I'd say get your ducks in a row. Number one, you definitely want to start with your pre-approval with a local lender.
Okay.
And it should be, part of your realtor's team because they have a working track record working with, that lender. So just basically getting everything in order. The other thing, too, is I like to weigh out all the options up front.
Okay.
With the buyer, explain to them where the market is and, what challenges we have and what options we have to look at as far as, getting a winning offer in.
And I think that's so important. I've heard you say educate your buyers on what's happening in the market because even with all the online data and everything, a buyer is a buyer. They're not an expert. And it's so important for the expert to educate them on what's going on so that they can really, you got to move fast and you have to know that, hey, this is a good deal. John's already told me what's happening. I've seen the stats and everything that's going on. And I know this is what I want to do. And you can run forward and not miss out on the opportunity. Kari, what about you? What's a strategy you can share with any of my buyers listening today?
I try to give them a lot of scenarios that could happen. Mm-hmm. And I tell them when we first get into a contract, we have 4 hoops. First hoop is initial terms and conditions, getting them agreed to between buyer and seller.
Okay.
Next, we move into the inspection, getting that waived. The third is the financing, making sure that the appraisal comes in and we're good to go. And the fourth is actually getting those loan documents to the escrow, to the closing company, so that we can go to the closing table and pass keys.
Makes total sense.
I tell them that just because they think they bought it today, we really do have 4 hoops that we'll go through.
Yeah.
And I'm going to keep them apprised of every hoop that we've jumped through, and at the end, we'll celebrate.
And I love it. And that's why I do my 8 milestones as well. Once you have final loan approval, it doesn't mean that you're closing the next day. Here's all of the steps that have to take place. We're halfway through the process. And as long as people know that here are the 8 dates and here's when they're going to be happening, it makes everything run efficiently. So I so much appreciate that, Kari. Jeff, what about you? What a strategy or the best information you could provide for a buyer listening today?
I have a modified version similar to Kari that the
Of course, you guys all think alike because you're all experts in the industry.
In this market, with the competition, multiple offer situation, I'm now spending time with people getting what their number is, whether we're using the escalation tool or not, but that they're comfortable with that number, that if they don't get it, I don't hear, why didn't we do X?
Right.
And that is it's stressful enough for some people, and to take that stress out, that your decision is made with confidence, based on the information that you have, and trying to be disappointed is fine, but to regret that kind of takes more to get over.
And it makes total sense. And that's, again, with the lending side of it, is the first thing I ask is, what are your payment objective? Where do you feel comfortable making a mortgage payment? What's your target price? And then here's what you're going to approve for. Now let's all bring it together, because these things are not going to match out. And I will tell you, doing lending, that most of the time people actually can approve for a much higher amount than they're ever going to pay.
Right.
Most of my clients are not buying at a 45% debt to income ratio based on gross income. So let's get realistic. You're going to approve for $3,500 a month. You want to keep your payment at $2,800. What is that going to buy? And usually you've got to be willing to move a little bit there to accomplish what you want in a property. So going through that education process and understanding is so important. Let's talk a little bit about properties, single family homes, condos. What are you seeing happening in your client base, and what are your suggestions on the difference between single family versus condo?
Well, I'm seeing a lot of action in condominiums.
And why is that, Jeff?
Well, probably because I work downtown.
Your market, yes.
There's no yards.
They want that high rise.
Or the townhouse sort of thing as well. So, but condos, like the first quarter of 2014, the median price on Capitol Hill was $317.
Okay.
That's up 3% over a year ago. And the Belltown is up 14% over a year ago.
That's a huge difference.
Days on market are down 12.5% over a year ago. So I'm not seeing a discrepancy between the values of whether to purchase a home or condo, but that's in my market that I concentrate in the city. And I'm sure there's other areas where there's going to be, their local expert will need to advise people on what their condo market is.
I think that the biggest thing, and I totally agree, Jeff, I think just the biggest thing of understanding what's happening with that association, and that's the only, the big difference is you just don't have complete control because of the association. So let's move over to put on your seller hat, because all of you work with buyers and sellers. And if we have any seller that's listening today, what is the best advice that you could give seller regarding top dollar for their home? Kari?
Price your house appropriately. Really, really zero in where your market is. Don't get too crazy on it, because you'll be disappointed.
Okay.
And prepare your house to sell so that you are like a camera ready, stage ready. You want to look like a Pottery Barn photo shoot. Declutter, paint, change that carpet. Don't think someone will change the carpet when they move in. Do it for them. People can't visualize.
Yes.
I stage most of the homes that I personally stage, most every home I have, if the client is up for it. But they will never know the money they lose by not preparing the home ahead of time before it goes on market.
Makes total sense. John, what about you?
Well, definitely what Kari's saying, definitely turnkey condition. I say another important thing is accessibility to the home.
Oh, that makes total
It's a biggie.
sense.
I know it's inconvenient for sellers, but you know.
Well, yeah, but you want to get
their goal
top
is to
dollar.
sell
Or do
the
you want
house.
exactly?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely accessibility.
Okay, Jeff.
Everything they've said, I agree 1,000%. But another addition I'm actually going through right now with wonderful sellers is get the dog out of there. And
Yeah.
we put new carpets in. Don't let the dog smell those carpets up.
Yeah, smell is
we've got
big.
Crates now. The dogs are living in crates. So that was another component along with what Kari and John said.
And it's been so warm out lately that we need to open the windows because you don't want to walk into a hot box, which we usually don't have that problem. But when it's 90 out and it's 92 on the thermostat, like as a listing agent, go open some of those windows and let some air through so they'll stay a while.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Now, what about on a contract sire when they've got all these multiple offers? So, I mean, some of these homes is just ridiculous is what's happened out there. But let's just say you got 5 offers on the table and you're representing the seller. What should they be looking for? How do they decide what offer to take? Because it isn't always necessarily about price.
You know, it's interesting you say that because I've kind of been thinking the psychology and watching what's been happening, and you'd think, oh, all sellers are taking all the cash offers, right? Well, that's actually not what I'm seeing at all. I mean, it's very interesting. It just depends. I think.
And why would they not? Why would they not take a cash offer versus and take one that somebody's got finance on there?
I think it depends. I think some sellers want to leave their house to somebody who they know is going to take care of it. They don't want to sell to an investor. It just depends.
Yeah.
It's an emotional connection for some sellers,
Yeah.
and they
Totally.
feel like if they're gonna pass the baton down to this new buyer, they want to just feel really good that they will love it and take care of it as well as they did.
Yeah. And what about I saw something in conversation because I hang out with a lot of you. I'm really vested in the real estate community and about the MLS, talking about the personal letters, which actually aren't supposed to be used anymore. I mean, it's not going to hurt a buyer by doing it, but a seller having anything to do with that personal letter in the contract can actually be an issue with discrimination. Have you guys any comments on that?
I've heard those conversations, and I've actually had we've had office meetings discuss the pros and cons about that, and mostly I have to say it's been con in my office recommending not. However, I've got buyers who have insisted on doing that. They feel it has made a difference.
Yeah.
And when I talked to this listing agent afterwards, it did make a difference.
Yes.
In several cases, his or her, their seller, appreciated knowing a little bit about who is going to be moving into their house.
No doubt that it makes a difference at all. It's just whether or not the realtor is representing the seller and is actually having that involved in the transaction that actually cause problems later on is what I've what I've heard, which was really interesting. So there's just a lot of stuff that happens out there. And gosh darn it, my engineer Carly, she's turned on the music, which means that we're going to have to end the show. Thank you so much, you guys, for coming in. What a blast!
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, and that's it. The Realtor panel's done. I just want to hang out for another few hours, but definitely come back, listen to the show. I'm here every Saturday. I promise I'll have another panel of realtors to talk about our market because there's just not enough time in the day. But this is your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, signing out for the day. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and thank you for taking time to talk money with me right here on 1150 AM KKNW.